The Christ Letters, with enhanced narration and text. Letter 3.8. The Cursing of the Fig Tree. Many events of great spiritual significance took place just prior to my death, which are excellent examples of the great cosmic laws in action within your dimension of existence. I am now giving you a brief account of those important events, since it is my purpose to enlighten your minds wholly, to give you knowledge beyond any knowledge yet received by any other person in your universe. When I began to prepare my disciples for my approaching death, it was an immensely difficult task. They could scarcely contain their shock and astonishment. The thought of my being crucified as an ordinary felon was repellent beyond words, and neither did they want to lose me from their midst. I had called them to follow me and leave behind lives which had been fairly prosperous. They had left their families and homes to rebuild their lives around me and my work. They had taken pride in my progress through the towns. They had been willing to be associated with me and be known as my disciples, despite the rejection and harsh criticism of their religious leaders. Furthermore, they loved and respected me, both for the way I lived my own teachings and the way I had compassionately healed so many people and brought them comfort in their unhappy lives. They truly believed I was the Son of God. How could the Son of God end up on the cross? They asked each other. Their horror increased with every question. It was unthinkable. They felt a tremendous void opening up in front of them, a void in their lives, and a huge crater in the earth on which they walked, and a vast expanse of instability and lack of purpose within themselves. What I told them about my future crucifixion they dared not contemplate. Such an event would destroy everything they had believed in with all their hearts. Consequently, my disciples loudly and volubly resisted what I tried to tell them, and stated again and again that such a thing could never be. When I stood firm against their stubborn denials, they were eventually forced to quieten their arguments and outwardly accept that such a thing might be possible. I told them that after my death they would see me again, and that I expected them to carry on the work I had started. The pain and argumentativeness I had aroused in my disciples also affected me deeply. It was no easy undertaking to go to Jerusalem, where my fate awaited me. More than anything, I wondered how I would measure up to this great challenge of my endurance. Would I be able to transcend the physical condition and enter into universal Father consciousness and remain there until I died? At times I was deeply frightened of the ordeal, but I dare not reveal this fear to my disciples. Therefore, I began my last journey towards Jerusalem with powerfully mixed feelings. On the one hand, I was weary of healing and talking and teaching people who listened with open mouths and had no real understanding of anything I was trying to tell them. Footnote: in the light of Christ's spiritual truth, doctrines become meaningless and are swiftly jettisoned from the illuminated mind. End of footnote. I had thought that my knowledge would enable people to climb out of their misery and, at the very least, make contact with the Father and gain a glimpse of the kingdom of heaven. There had been no evidence of such a spiritual awakening, even amongst my disciples. My disappointment and sense of failure made me glad to be moving on from the earth life to the glorious existence I knew awaited me after my death. At the same time, I wondered how I would endure the pain of the crucifixion. Throughout my mission, I had lived in a more or less consistently peaceful, frequently exalted state of mind, with my thoughts focused on the Father Love Consciousness, author of all being, knowing that I had but to ask, and what I asked for would swiftly manifest itself. Would I be able to keep my equanimity when brought before the council, when led out to my crucifixion, when nailed to the cross with my weight hanging from my hands? Because I was now giving way to doubts and fears, the normal level of my consciousness frequencies were dropping. They were taking me down into the frequencies of the earth plane consciousness. I became a prey again to my old aggression, prompting me to unreasonable actions I would never have contemplated earlier when in my former state of total harmony with the Father Love Consciousness. My doubts and conflicts externalized in my life as human emotions and impulses, which contravened the cosmic law of love. First, there was the episode of the fig tree. I was hungry and went to the tree, not really expecting to find fruit, because it was not the right season for figs. When my search was unfruitful, I cursed the fig tree. 24 hours later, it was shriveled to its roots. It was a shocking experience. It was the first time my words had caused harm to anything. However, it clearly demonstrated for my disciples the power of thought for good or evil. It showed them that the more spiritually evolved a person is, the greater is the impact of their words on the environment. I took the opportunity to point out to my disciples that I had thoughtlessly behaved as does the average man or woman who, when having high expectations, cannot get what they want. They usually react with anger, tears, hostility, and even sharp words which might or might not amount to a kind of ill-wishing or cursing of the person who has denied them their heart's desire. They had now seen for themselves what my cursing had done to the fig tree. They should now be able to understand that whilst a strong conviction would bring about anything they might desire and imagine, they must also be constantly aware of their own mental emotional condition. They must not harbour resentment against others, but must swiftly forgive. Otherwise they could do much damage to those they resented, which damage would return to them in due course as a harvest of their sowing. Furthermore, as one sows, so does one reap. I knew that what I had done to the fig tree would inevitably return to me in one form or another.